This is a big one. Today's show, well, it's about a big speaker, the KEF Reference 3 Meta. The sound is big. The sound is highly transparent, very dynamic. I was totally knocked out by the sound of this speaker. How's that for a spoiler? But you remember Meta from when I reviewed, a lot of people reviewed the LS50 Meta that came out in 2020. Now I have the distinct pleasure of listening to its much bigger brother, the Reference 3 Meta. It's a very, very special speaker in a number of ways, but I'm going to lead with this. It is designed and made in the UK. And also that each pair of Reference 3 Metas is built entirely by one person from start to finish. Now, there's more than one person building them. I'm just saying one person builds each pair, and then that pair is then measured against the laboratory reference 3, the reference, and it has to match, the production speaker has to match the laboratory reference within 0.5 dB over its entire range before it can get packed and shipped to a customer. That's pretty amazing. And by the way, speaking of each customer, they are built to order. There's no inventory of Reference 3s when someone buys them. Somebody makes them for that person. So yes, it's a very high-end speaker, and it's very expensive, and I'll get to the price soon enough. But, you know, I have to keep circling back to how surprised I was by the sound of this speaker. Now, I have heard KEF blades at shows. I've heard a lot of KEFs in my life. This one took me, or took the sound to another level for me. It was that good. By the way, I don't want you to confuse the reference speaker line with the R speaker line. Completely different. The R is really good. I had the pleasure of reviewing the R3, I think, a few years ago. Wonderful speaker. But the reference line takes the sound to another level. And by the way, yes, speaking of another level, there will be an Audiophiliac viewer system of the day later on in today's show. Now, of course, the Reference 3 Meta features a KEF UniQ point source concentric mid-range tweeter driver, and it is the latest 12th generation version. Some of you may not be familiar with the KEF Meta technology, but I'll put up a picture of the disc itself, the Meta disc, which is in 2 layers, and it has a total of 30 channels, each one tuned to a specific frequency band, and the Meta disc absorbs the back wave of the tweeter of the UniQ driver. And it starts working at 620 Hertz and goes out to 40K. So instead of the sound bouncing back within the UniQ driver to the tweeter, the Meta disc absorbs those frequencies, 620 to 40K. And that's why, well, that's why it sounds, it's there to enhance clarity. The UniQ driver sits in the cabinet in what KEF calls a shadow flare to further reduce diffraction off of the front baffle of the speaker. Here's a design, here's another little design detail, is that front baffle is attached to the cabinet with 8 bolts that run from the front baffle to the back of the speaker, and then those rear bolts are tightened to compress the entire cabinet to make it more rigid. Okay, so what about the woofers, Steve? Okay, they're 2 6.5-inch aluminum woofers. They're each housed in a separate compartment, meaning they don't share the internal space of the cabinet. Okay, so then there's 2 bass ports on the back of the speaker. I like that, but what's really interesting is you can take those covers off the ports and then change the tube that's inside the speaker. Each Ref 3 comes with 2 sets of port tubes. There's a long one and a short one. And they change the low frequency extension of the speaker and also the roll off of the speaker. So you can switch back and forth, figure out which one works best in your room, and there you go. And in my room, definitely the long port sounded better. And when I say better, I mean the bass was deeper, but also a little faster, a little tighter, a little bit better integrated with the UniQ driver. So that just took a couple of minutes for me to figure out which port was going to work. Here are the specs for the KEF Reference 3 Meta. Let's get to the prices. I know some of you are asking, so Steve, come on, just tell us the price. We get the idea it's an expensive speaker, and it is. The Reference 3 Meta sells for $15,000 a pair. The stand mount version, the Reference 1, is $9,000 a pair. And the big flagship of the line, the Reference 5 Meta, is $22,000 a pair. So there you go. The setup system was you could call it my reference system, which includes a past Labs XA100.5, although there were times I tried the first Wat F8, and that worked well with the Reference 3s, but not as good as the XA100.5, so I stuck with the XA100.5 throughout the review. The past Labs XP30 preamp, the DAC was a Mola Tambaqui, the CD transport, Jay's Audio CDT3, turntable was the Technics 1200G with a bunch of different cartridges. The phono preamp was usually the Parasound JC3 Plus. As for cables, the cables were Wire World, Nordist, Analysis Plus, and Cardus. Cardus speaker cables through most of the review. Anyway, so that's the system. So a couple of observations first about the sound quality. These speakers sound good, played loud. Louder than I would normally play, which says something, but they also were great, played very quietly for late night sessions. That was really interesting. Imaging was phenomenal. Big, spacious, and incredibly well focused. These speakers, as big as they are, really do disappear. You know, I do want to talk a little bit about my music choices over the course of this review. And that is, I did not, cherry pick my recordings because they sounded really good, because they were audiophile recordings. I mean, I did a bit, but what I wanted to hear was just good music. And I kept coming back to Aretha Franklin. What a singer. And just her power. Yeah, I've heard that before on many other systems, many other really good systems. I can hear what a great, intense, emotionally charged singer she was. But I got something different and better with this one, with the Reference 3 Meta. I felt her sadness come through. There was a deep sadness to her sound that I never noticed that before. The soul was there, but the pain / sadness was there too. This in her phrasing, just in her tone, it really, really touched me. So I thought, yeah, these speakers can do stuff that most speakers miss. They gloss over. That's why it's a great speaker. And then for a contrast with Aretha, I went to this Peggy Lee record, this song, Is That All There Is? As in, is that all there is to the circus? Is that all there is to fire? Is that all there is to life? It is melancholy. It's got strings. But Peggy Lee is such an incredible, nuanced singer. The way she plays with the lyrics is goosebump territory. But this particular song, Is That All There Is? If you've never heard that before, search that out on some streaming thing. I'd be curious what you think of it. Anyway, this whole album, the production is incredible because there's a lot going on. It's a very dense recording, but the imaging was wide open. Peggy was right there. Just gorgeous. Just a gorgeous recording. And when you hear a great singer on a great speaker like this, it can change you. It can change the way you feel about that song. I'm a big fan of Can, the German prog rock group. This record, Future Days, which I think was recorded in 1973, it does not sound like 1973 or 83 or 93. It sounds kind of contemporary in the way they just stretch out and do these spacey jams. And the imaging, again, the spaces between the instruments, and they do percussion on these recordings, it just blows me away. And again, I know this recording pretty well. I don't have it since 1973. I've had it about 5 or 6 years. And I played it on a lot of systems, but here on the Reference 3, again, it was a deeper experience. It just was. So then I thought, I got to do this. I got to compare the Klipsch Cornwall 4 with the Reference 3. Now you look at these two speakers side by side. The Cornwall 4 is a much bigger, certainly wider speaker. It's more, let's just say, imposing. But got to do this. So I did. And I was listening to Santana 3, the one with Tower of Power. And I'm playing both speakers really loud as I'm moving them, shoving them back and forth to listen to them. And wow, I was surprised, because the Klipsch is big, it sounds big, but not as big, not as powerful as the Reference 3. The Reference 3 just has two 6.5-inch woofers. The Cornwall 4 has a big 15-inch woofer. But here's the thing, the Klipsch is tuned for sensitivity, high sensitivity. So even though the woofer is bigger, it doesn't feel as powerful as, feel it in your gut bass as I got from the Reference 3. Yeah, and I was like, wait a minute, man. And just the clarity, overall clarity, transparency, whatever you want to call it, of the Reference 3 was way ahead. And it just sounded more integrated than the Cornwall 4. The Cornwall 4 sounded like a woofer, a mid-range, and a tweeter by comparison. I don't think of it that way when I normally listen to it. But compared to the Reference 3, yeah, the Cornwall could not compete. And as for dynamics, because it is a horn speaker, and the Reference 3 is not, yeah, if I really, really pushed it, I felt that the dynamics are stronger from the Cornwall 4. But you know what? Some reason, I don't know how they did it, but the dynamic oomph of the Reference 3 was really good. It's no slouch in that area. For contrast, I wanted to calm down a bit and listen to this Eric Satie LP, Music of Eric Satie, solo piano. And I think I mentioned earlier in another video that I spent a year of my life, a little over a year of my life, trying to learn how to tune pianos. And the thing was, I wasn't very good at it, but I did enjoy being around other piano tuners and teachers and stuff. So I learned a lot about pianos and the sound of pianos from the inside of the piano. So I'm playing this Eric Satie, and the piano-ness of the recording, what other word can I use? It just sounded more there. The transient response of this speaker, when those felt hammers are hitting those strings, just sounded more correct to me. The tone of the instrument just sounded better. This recording is nothing special, although I love the music. It's my favorite Eric Satie recording. But it just sounded more correct, more like a piano than I usually get, certainly more than I get from the Klipsch Cornwall 4s. So I do want to talk a little bit about the UniQ's tweeter. It is great. It is very, very refined, very clear, and doesn't call attention to itself. If you listen to these speakers firing straight ahead with a good set of electronics behind them, they will not sound bright. They will just sound open and pure. There's a purity to the treble that I just love, because I had to keep reminding myself, oh yeah, the treble, because it's just so good. Now, as I said earlier, you should keep them firing straight ahead, not towed in at all, not even a little bit, towards the listening position. And those are my impressions listening that way. So they weren't particularly, this speaker, though it's very high resolution, it wasn't critical of, recordings. You could play some pretty nasty recordings and not be cringing. That's amazing, considering its resolution of fine detail. So it could do both. It could be very involving and you could hear everything, but you're not, backing off, right? I can't think of any recording that I played that sounded unlistenable over this speaker. I'll put it that way. I don't know if you know this about me, but I'm a big fan of the Velvet Underground and Lou Reed's solo career. But this reunion concert, this reunion tour from 1993, it's really good. It is amazing that the band got back together, the original 4 members, and just lay this thing out. I was so thrilled that this band got back together, however briefly, to do it one more time and just knock it out of the park. If you're a Velvet Underground fan or a Lou Reed fan who've never heard this, definitely look for it. It is now that time. Yes, it is. It is time for, so Steve, what do you really think? What do you really think of the KEF Reference 3 Meta? I think this is a phenomenal speaker. And actually, at $15,000 a pair, which is a lot of money, I don't know. I've heard speakers that cost way more than this that didn't move me the way this speaker has. Because the bottom end, the mid-range, the top, the imaging, the dynamics, everything about it, I don't really have anything to say to criticize it, except you know, I wish it was more affordable. But there is a sort of a workaround solution if your room isn't big. And by the way, this speaker needs to be in a big room. That's up for you and your dealer to figure out if your room is big enough. But a big room, and if your room is small, definitely if your room is small, but if your room is even medium sized, its smaller brother, the stand mount, the Reference 1 Meta, might be a better option. And by the way, it's $9,000 a pair. So there's the thing. And the big brother, the flagship, if you have a huge room and you're into cranking it and you got some bucks, yeah, for $22,000, the Reference 5 would be worth considering and checking out, because as I said, I actually haven't heard it. But my experiences with this speaker, the Reference 3 Meta, are literally all positive. I am so happy that I agreed to do this review, because sometimes I think, it's so big, it's so expensive, but no, this one is worth it. If you got the money, go for it. Now, of course, if this is completely out of your price range and you've watched this far into the video, I would urge you to consider checking out KEF's R series line that also has some towers and a stand mount and a center. And I reviewed the stand mount speaker, which is the R3. I'm pretty sure it's the R3. Anyway, that one really is amazing, but I didn't hear the Meta version. I'm sure that's coming down the pike. That's probably the next series that gets the Meta treatment. So anyway, there you have it. If you got the bucks, the Reference 3 Meta is well worth considering, and it is a lot less than a lot of other speakers that are in that category, let's say like the Wilson Sabrina, for example. Anyway, it is now time for the Audiophiliac viewer system of the day. Ron sent this one, and he lives in Eagle, Michigan. And this is quite the system. It spans, well, every decade since the 1970s. The turntable is a Thorens 125 Mark II with Grace 707 arm and a Lin ASAC moving coil cartridge. Oh, I love that cartridge. Then there's a Pioneer DV45A DVD player, uses a transport, a Benchmark DAC1 USB. Now, oh wait, there's a Denon AVR X3600 receiver that's actually being used as a surround processor, an Adcom GFA 5500 power amplifier, and then he has a Schiit front end with a Schiit Freya Plus preamp, a Manny phono stage, and a Schiit Max equalizer. Oh, then there's the speakers. Those Dalquist DQ10s, I've heard them sound really, really good back in the day. And then there's Sonus Faber Veneer, is that how you say it? 3.0, and a Velodyne 1200 subwoofer. Cables are by AudioQuest and Benchmark. Nice stuff, Ron. So, okay, so we are back. Thank you so much for being here. My name, again, is Steve Guttenberg, and this is the Audiophiliac Show. And if you've gotten this far, I would like you to consider joining my Patreon. You can join for a couple of dollars a month, up to $50 a month. And if you go for the $50 a month range, you and I will have a conversation of about 15 minutes long at the beginning of every month. So, and I've been doing this for years with a lot of people, and I enjoy it so much talking to the people who watch this show and hearing feedback from them. And for the people who are paying less in Patreon, if you email me questions, I'd be more likely to actually get to them than I would on the channel itself, on the YouTube channel. And by the way, your payment is now accepted in dollars, pounds, or euros on Patreon. So again, thank you for being here, and I hope you come back really, really soon. Bye-bye.